Hi, his kids. Welcome back to another lesson. We are going to be talking about caring and sharing. And for reference, this is lesson 7. And no, we are not talking about Care Bears. I know some of you thought that. It's not it. So most of us are concerned with being fair. Okay? We want others to be fair to us, and in turn, we'll try to be fair to others. Well, today in our Bible lesson, we're going to learn about fairness and, just being fair even when others weren't fair to us. So, we are going to go ahead and read our story. Follow along with me. So I want you guys to listen with your ears, follow along with your fingers or whatever you have to follow along. You might have a pencil that you might be pointing to, whatever. But we are going to read together and learn about being fair. So, for a time, David and his men had been living with their families in the city of Ziklag. And Ziklag was a city in southern Palestine where David lived for 16 months while hiding from Saul. So for a time, him and his men were there in that city of Ziklag. While him and his men were away, however, the Amalekites, they had always been enemies of Israel. Okay, they were enemies of Israel, and when they captured cities, they often sold women and children as slaves. So the Amalekites attacked Ziklag, burning the city and capturing all the women and children. So that was not a good thing. Hold on just a second. So, through the priest, I don't know how to pronounce his name, Abithar, I'm sure I pronounced that wrong. David asked God whether he should go after the Amalekites, and God told him yes. David's men had been traveling for many days already. Some of his men were too exhausted to go after the Amalekites. So David left them behind to stay with the supplies. So we have a few questions up here that I've highlighted. That I've highlighted in green. So the first question is, how did the men react when the city was burned down? So the men cried until they had no strength left. So they were very upset that this had happened to them. And how might we say David was affected? David's wives, Abigail and another name I can't pronounce, had been captured, and his children were probably taken as well. So David was affected because his wives and children were taken, and he was just sad. I'd have been sad too. And another question is, why were David's men upset with him? They were very upset because their families had been taken, one. The passage says that they were bitter in spirit, meaning they had evil looks towards him and, that kind of thing. So they were turning against David in their sorrow. So they had to find someone to blame. And that someone happened to be poor David, who also was going through the same thing. Was David being treated fairly by his men? Why or why not? Is that the next question? Yes, it is. Okay, let me read a little bit further. I may have jumped ahead. So, with only 400 men, he went after the Amalekites. Along the way, they found an Egyptian slave. This slave belonged to the Amalekite who had left him to die, so he wasn't being treated fairly at all. The slave helped David find the Amalekite army, so David and his men fought against the Amalekites and defeated them. They recovered all of the people who had been taken away, as well as all the possessions that were taken. Then David came to the 200 men who had been too exhausted to follow him into battle and who were left behind at Besorveh Valley. They came out to meet David and the men with him. As David and his men approached, however, he asked them how they were. But all the evil men and troublemakers among David's followers said, because they did not go with us, we will not share with them the plunder. And plunder was money and property seized, which means taken, in raids, meaning when they attacked a city, all of them kind of went together and took property, from whoever it was, like a pirate. Often, this plunder was a soldier's only pay for fighting, so it was like a payday. Yeah. We will not share with them the plunder we recovered. However, each man may take his wife and children and go. So they were like, we're not giving them any of this stuff we recovered, but they can take their wives and children and leave us with our payday. David replied, "No, my brothers, you must not do that with what the Lord has given us. He has protected us and delivered into our hands the raiding party that came against us. Who will listen to what you say? The share of the man who stayed with the supplies is to be the same as that of him who went down to the battle. All will share alike. I've been made this statute and ordinance for Israel from the day to this." So, let's see. Was David being treated fairly by this or not? So, when the city of Ziklag got burned down, of course the men was upset, but they were more upset with David because, they had to find someone to blame. And their families were taken away, and so they blamed David for that. So, was that fair? I don't think so. One, because David was not being treated fairly. It was not his fault that the Amalekites had attacked the city in the first place. The men were upset and just blaming David out of their hurt and frustration. Sometimes when we get hurt and sometimes when we're mad and we get frustrated, we want to take our anger out on someone else in order, not to put the blame on ourselves. We want to take our frustration out on other people. And I realized that, over time when I was younger, I would take out my frustration on other people, not meaning to, but I did because I was angry and frustrated and I wanted to get it out and I wanted someone to blame. So that's what I did. So what do you think would have been a fair way to divide the plunder? So the men who were too tired and too exhausted to go, do you think they should have got any piece in the payday that they received, being as it was the only reward for going into battle? Some of you may feel that the 400 men that went to battle should be the only ones receiving the payday. Others, you may think that the 200 other men who were still working, even though they stayed behind because they were watching the supplies, maybe they deserve it too. But we must think about fairness and when it works in our favor, but not when it seems to work against us. So sometimes if you happen to be in the men who stayed behind, you would want to take part in the payday as well. But if someone felt that you shouldn't get it, you would be treated unfairly. You just got to put yourself in the other person's position. Okay. So, David not only shared the plunder with the 200 men who stayed behind, but with many others as well. Why do you think David was so willing and generous with what he sees from the raid? Because he was grateful for the help he had received from others when he ran from Saul. Meaning when he was being hunted down by his best friend's father, he received help from many people, and he was just grateful that he was still alive and he was able to be where he was at. And, he gave back because of how grateful he was. Everything we have comes from God, and his generosity should encourage us to be generous as well. David did what was better than just being fair. Okay, it was fair for only the 400 to receive the payday, but it was better if you do more than that. You know what I'm saying? It was better to share with everyone rather than keep it for the ones who did, because it's still not fair. Okay, so We try to be fair in our dealings, and that's always good. But David chose to be more than fair. He chose to be generous and to share his riches with many other people instead of just keeping it for himself. What might have happened if David had not made his men share equally? Well, it probably would have divided his men against each other. They would have probably resented each other. Some of his men might have left David because of this, which would have left him vulnerable to Saul's soldiers. So he did what was right. He was also thinking ahead. How would that make others feel if I did it this way? You have to think that way sometimes. Even though, half of the men stayed behind because they were too exhausted and too tired, you still have to think that way. Okay, he was thinking like a king. Yes. So, equal rights for all. Do we really desire to be kind? Do we really desire that kind of fairness? Meaning, not just because, let's say you had the church cleanup, and some of us were being lazy and decided that they didn't want to do as much work as others, and it would be fair for the ones who did most of the work to get whatever the prize was. But it would be generous, and it wouldn't cause such a divide or such, tension between two groups of people if everybody was generous and fair, even when they didn't have to be. So I'm going to ask you guys, how do you feel if someone shares some candy with you? I assume that you would feel happy, friendly, pleased, that kind of good feeling. How might you feel if you were told or asked to share your candy? So if someone shared candy with me, I'm happy, I'm good. And then when I remember being little and having been asked to share gum with friends at school, that's the main thing, because you show up with some gum and everybody in your class asks for it, but you kind of feel like, I want to share all my candy. But how would you feel if you were told or asked to share your candy? Some of us might say you will be afraid you won't have enough for yourself, or why can't they get their own candy? Or maybe I'll share next time. Equal share sounds like a good idea, but often when it comes to ourselves and what we really want is special treatment. Meaning we want people to be fair to us, but we don't always have to try to be fair to others. It's like a double standard, like a special treatment for ourselves. We often hear, look out for number one. This is the exact opposite of what God's word teaches us. David set a good example in his decision to treat all of his soldiers equally. Sharing fairly is God's will for his children, meaning us, because we are his children. And it is shown in many places in the Bible. Jesus promised a place in heaven to the repentant thief on the cross. Okay? He was on the cross. He was a thief. And he promised a place in heaven for him. Just as he promised the faithful disciples who served throughout his earthly ministry. That is found in Luke chapter 23, verses 40 and 43, and also in John chapter 14, verses 2 through 3. The Apostle James warned Christians to treat rich people and poor people the same because Christ makes no distinction. He has no respect of person. He doesn't care about your race. He doesn't care about how much money you have. He doesn't care about the shoes or the clothes you wear or how many things you have. We're all equal in his sight. We're his children. He loves us just like that, just because. Okay? So, we're going to scroll back up to the first page, which is page 1. And we're going to talk about this. What's the difference? Have you ever gone to a party and come home feeling like it wasn't as enjoyable as you would have hoped it to be? What sorts of things made you feel this way? Maybe the food wasn't good or the people were in a bad mood. Perhaps you didn't have fun because of the entertainment, or you didn't really feel welcome. Well, let's see how many differences you can find between the two pictures. Be sure to circle the things in picture B that are different than in picture A. So we're going to go ahead and say, like it says here, this is picture A and this is picture B. I'm gonna try to turn and not turn my back to the camera because I do it a lot. So in picture A, let's start at the top and work our ways down. So in picture A, we see that the sign looks kind of haphazardly done, meaning it's half done. Not really pretty. The lines are all colored outside of it. It's kind of just thrown up there. And here we see the picture is very nicely written. It's all colored in the lines. The handwriting's nice, equal, you know, that kind of thing. Oh, another thing is they don't have any streamers at the top of the page, like at the top of on the roof. They don't have any streamers. Try to make that there. There's no streamers. Also, there are no balloons in this picture. Do you see there? There's no balloons, just the window. Okay, another thing, if you look in the background, the dishes in the sink here are piled up. You see that? So here, there are no dishes. You see there? There's no dishes. Another thing we can look at is, do you see here she has ice cream and cake? How about this? She has half melted ice cream and no cake. You see that? Another thing we can look at is, look at these presents. Wow. Okay, they're half done. The boxes are all busted up, taped wrong way. It looks bad. But here you see that someone took time and maybe accepted a little help to get these presents wrapped beautifully. Another thing we can notice is the facial expressions of the family members and how they are looking. Okay, here everybody looks really much more happier, relaxed, and in a better mood in picture B, whereas in picture A everybody looks kind of mad and upset. Hold on, I can make that better. Somebody looks mad and upset, and you know, they just don't look very happy, relaxed, or pleased. Okay, another thing, look at the dog. We're gonna call him Fluffy. The dog looks really happy here. Look at there. But look here, he looks like he's just not in a good mood. He's not enjoying anything that's happening. He looks terrible. Also, let's look here. There's a very beautiful centerpiece on the table. No centerpiece here. Nobody had time to do it. And look at how the table's set. Like some of the stuff doesn't even match. Okay? So as you can see, there are a lot of differences in this page, these two pictures. The moods are different. The aesthetics, mean how they look, the background looks is all different. So what are some of the things that made you decide that one party was better than the other? So which party is better than the other? I would have to say this party in picture B is better than picture A. Why do I decide that? Because look at the atmosphere. Here, everybody's happy, everybody's calm, everybody's relaxed, pleased, they're having a good time. But here in picture A, everybody does not look like they're having a good time. Everybody looks mad and moody, and there's just, everything looks thrown together, and everything over here looks neat. So, why do you think this party here turned out nicer? Everyone shared in the work and put in more effort to do it. So I can see that maybe the mom helped do it, set the table, or dad washed the dishes, the daughter baked the cake and got the ice cream together, and the brother helped with the decorations. Everybody had their own part in doing it. How do you feel when people are unwilling to help you with work? Well, I would feel sad, angry, frustrated, like I have too much to do, or like the work isn't worth doing. Everybody's been in a group project. Everybody's experienced lazy Lucy, lazy somebody, and they don't want to do any of the work, don't want to take any part of it, but they get half the credit. I've experienced that in my lifetime, and I was frustrated, I was angry, and I never wanted to work with that person again. How do you feel when others pitch in and share their work with you? I would say that maybe happier, relieved. I would probably feel like it's more fun to work together on a project, even eager to get started. And also I'll be able to do more than I could do by myself. Cooperation makes things seem not so much like a chore and more like something fun to do. I want you guys, I got 2 questions for you. One, what does today's Bible story teach you all about sharing? And what will you share this week? We're going to think about that. And also, we did answer a lot of these questions. So that is that on that page. Let's scroll on down to the next activity, I think, which I might have you guys do on your own. I'm not sure yet. Looks like I might have to. So this activity is called Care to Share. With possible, is this right? Yeah. With the possible exception of riches, all of us can share things mentioned on the page with others. So with the exception of money, that's what that means. Riches, money. Okay? We can all share the things mentioned on the page with others. So this is something I'm going to have you guys do on your own or together with your parents, whatever you feel like that was best to do. Do you ever wonder what you have to share? Use the clues below to help unscramble 7 things you could share with others. Then think about people with whom you could share these things with. So I'm going to help you guys with the first one, which is this one. Blank. Here's what you wear on your face to share good things. So there's a scrambled word here. It's M-I-S-L-E. Wow, what does that mean? Well, M-I-S-L-E looks like smile, and you wear smiles on your face to share good feelings with other people. So like you get a gift, you smile when you see it because you're happy, and it lets others know that you like it. Yay. So we're going to put smile. I-L-E right there. How about that? Smile. Wow, smile. Here's what you wear on your face to share good feelings. Okay, and also notice that there's a circle here. Oops, right here with the letter S. So the 1 is S. So while I will look at that and say, oh, so 1 is S, I would go down to the bottom and look. There's an S right there. So I would fill that in as I go. So it's very easy. It's not that bad to write. I'm going to do a hard one for you guys. Let's do this one, the next one. It says blank. By doing what you're told, you can share this with your parents or teachers. So it's very good to follow the rules, follow directions, do what you're told. And a big word for all that sum up together is called obedience. And if I look at the scrambled words, it's very similar to obedience. So I'm going to spell it out here. O-B-E. Ooh, that's bad. Hold on. Let's erase that. E-D-I-E-N-C and E. Look at there. Obedience fits right there. And also take a note that there are circled letters that you could use in the bottom of the page. So we see that number 7 is O and 9 is E. So we look over here, look for number 7 is O and 9 is E. So very easy, simple page to do. I want you guys to do that for homework. And as we think about this, we are going to look at our key verse. So let's read our key verse together, which is this right here. And do not forget to do good and to share with others, for with such sacrifices God is pleased. Hebrews 13 and 16. So as you think about today's story, what are some good things we can share with others? We can share rewards, work, smile, obedience, money, and possessions. Possessions meaning toys, pencils, supplies, stuff like that. This maybe something that they shared in the Bible story as well. When we share, we might have to give something up we want for ourselves and give it to a person who needs it more. Like I remember one time I won something in a drawing, and it was like some school supplies or something. It was like a notebook, some pens and pencils, yada yada yada. But I knew there was a person that needed it more than I did. So I ended up giving it to this person who didn't really appreciate it, but I gave it to them because I knew they needed it more. Out of sacrifice for me wanting it, even though I really, really wanted it, I opted to give it away. So, what are some examples of this kind of sharing? So, when we have some fun planned and give it up to help someone with work. When we want to buy something for ourselves but use the money to give to needy people, or when we have only a little food and we share it with someone who doesn't have any. Like maybe you packed your lunch for school and somebody sitting next to you doesn't have any food. You might want to share, give them a piece of your apple, give them half of the sandwich. It's good to be kind. And this special kind of sharing pleases God. Consider David's example of sharing as you go throughout your week. I'm going to challenge you to do something kind and do the same kind of sharing even when it doesn't seem fair to someone. It is that kind of sharing that can only be done with God's help, okay? God can help you if you let him. And this kind of sharing that I'm talking about can only be done with his help. And also, it is important to ask him what you can do for other people daily. That's called praying, like we have tonight, Thursday night prayer. So, what we're going to do is we're going to close out in prayer, and I'm going to dismiss you all. So everybody bow your heads, close your eyes. Thank you, Lord, for allowing us to come together and even on this platform, oh God, and learn more about you and what your word says about caring and sharing. God, please help us to learn to share in all kinds of situations. And Lord, I want you to encourage my His Kids class to share out of love and not just because they have to. And also, God, remind them that this brings a special joy to you when they do this kind of sharing. In Jesus' name, amen. And I want to thank you all for joining me this evening and just learning about God and how he wants us to share and care for people and be kind to others. Next week, we're going to learn about giving thanks. Always give thanks, okay? Because there's always something to be thankful for. I can go down the list, and that will take another 30 minutes for me to even get through a pinch of what I'm thankful for. So thank you guys for joining us, and I hope you gleaned or you learned something from this. And I will see you guys next week, and we'll be talking about giving thanks on lesson 8. See you guys later. Have a wonderful Thursday night. See you guys in prayer. Bye.